So I wanted to talk about what it's like to live in Paris. I mean, I'm an American, but it feels like when you live in Paris, there's a back and forth, right? There's high points and low points of living in this city, let's be real. But for all its benefits and its flaws, my honest feeling of Paris is I've never fallen in love with a city so quickly. It's like the city puts you under a spell, and I am bewitched by its charms. I mean, in Paris and in France, the simple pleasures are done so well. The food, the culture, the ambiance, the architecture, everything is done to such a high standard, which is why I find it so weird and so irksome that when the French do so many things so well, when they do things incorrectly or bad, it's like, why? You know how to do the important things in life so well. Why are you messing this up? All right, so let me start with this. I love Paris. I think it's one of the greatest cities in the world to live in. And I wouldn't live here if I was ambivalent about it, right? I constantly side with the French. Half my family is French. And whenever people from all over the world ask me, hey, where should I travel to? Come to France. I always want to get people to come to France. But there are some things that you should be aware of if you're thinking of coming here. More so if you're thinking of moving here. For myself, who's lived here for about 6 months, I want to mention the things that I love, that I hate, that frustrate me. It's not meant to be a bit of a rant, but also I feel like I kind of need to rant. I need to get some things off my chest. So let's begin. The first thing you'll feel here is the density. I mean, there is so much to see, so many experiences to have, so many places to know. That being said, you do feel like you're living on top of one another when you're here. And to be honest, like, Paris is a lot smaller than I thought it was. It feels like it's 100 small towns all mashed up together. And so what that means is you can walk to most places, right? You can get around on foot pretty easily, and if you get tired, you can get on a bike. But when you're walking around, you have to take the sidewalks, and the sidewalks are so goddamn annoying here. They wouldn't fit two fat Americans across shoulder to shoulder. It's so narrow. You have to like shimmy across people and sidestep just to get around. The fact that the sidewalks are so narrow isn't a problem in and of itself. There's not a whole lot you can do to make the roads or sidewalks wider. What gets me even more is the fact that there's so much shit on the sidewalks. You've got bins, and then you couple that with the millions of scooters and rental bikes all over this town, and it becomes like an obstacle course trying to walk around this city. The constant amount of construction in this town is overwhelming. This grievance isn't unique to Paris, but it's so much louder here than anywhere else I've lived. Whether I'm working at home or working in a cafe, there's drilling, knocking, hammering everywhere. The noise in this city is definitely affects me the most. I have sensitive hearing at best. I had this from my musician days playing drums and being around loudspeakers. Like, I definitely am sensitive to hearing, so when a horn goes off or when a motorcycle rumbles past me, like, it definitely, as the young kids would say, triggers stress in me. So I've even gone so far as to buy like noise cancelling headphones, and I do wear them everywhere I go in the city just to maintain an even keel as I'm walking around. And I think the car noises and motorcycle noises are so bad because there's no congestion charge here in Paris. Unlike London, where they've definitely curtailed the amount of traffic for air quality, Paris doesn't have that. Which gets me on to my next point. The pollution. You do feel it here. You feel it in your lungs. At the end of the day, it's in your nose. There's a grit on your teeth. I mean, it would be insane to me to own and have a car here in Paris. There's no reason. It's so packed. There's too many cars on the streets already, which leads to pollution. And because the buildings are relatively high, what you get is this smog that rolls down the street, and it keeps the pollution in almost like a corridor. I love windy days because that blows all the pollution right out of the city. And so the mayor of Paris has decided that the solution to pollution is to have bikes. That being said, that gets me onto my next annoyance. The bikes. And look, I'm all for the bike lanes in this town, but when you look at a map of Paris, side tangent, here's a bit of a history lesson. The Haussmann architecture that I adore and is so famous in the city. When they built Paris after the revolution, what the government and its lead architect designer didn't want is for the populace to rise up again and to do what they did in the revolution, which was to make barricades full of furniture and chairs and set it on fire and create corrals by blocking off the streets or certain arrondissements. The Ottoman decided to widen the streets, but what he also did is to quote-unquote thwart off the enemy. They decided to make Paris purposefully difficult to navigate. Like, there's not a single right angle or grid system in this entire town. Everything is diagonal roads that cut off certain sections, roundabouts, and so what you have is a very difficult city to navigate if you're not from here. So why have I mentioned this, right? Let's get back to the bikes. So when you have this crazy revolution-based road system in Paris and you try and paint on or slap on a bike system over it, it's insane. The bike lanes go against the traffic, which some people are for, some people are against. I'm more against it because you're on your tiny little bike riding against Vespas and motorcycles and lorry drivers who will slow down because they see you, but I don't want to be the reason for a lorry driver to have to slow down. Like, I'm not willing to make myself a human speed bump. So to ride against the traffic or ride against the current or flow of traffic happens a lot here in Paris. So you've got traffic on your left-hand side, you're on a tiny little bike, and on your right-hand side you've got parking and rental bikes and scooters, and it just becomes, again, like the sidewalks. There are obstacles all over the goddamn place. On to the next one. You'd assume that coming out of COVID and that whole clusterfuck that it was, the one tiny little silver lining of it would have been that we would have sorted ourselves out when it comes to buying things online and getting them shipped to our house in an expedited, efficient manner. But that really hasn't happened here in Paris. And what I'll say next is corralled to Amazon deliveries. The delivery guys here will call you non-stop. And sometimes I can't really answer. I'm working or I'm on the phone with someone else, and it's like having a bitey chihuahua just yapping at you all the time. One of the nice things that we have here in Paris is someone called a gardien, and that's a very regal old name. They just kind of manage the building, right? So you would assume that the first port of call whenever a delivery guy comes in would be to call the gardien. She's there all the time. The gardien has her own office with lights and a button on the intercom for any delivery driver to chat to her. Now, the front door is about 50 feet away from her office, and to be honest, according to the delivery driver, she may as well be in China. They are so unaware of her existence, it's laughable. In the delivery instructions, I'll put the Guardian's number, the intercom, even the front buzzer to come in and drop off the package. But these guys, they don't read a goddamn thing. And it just, over the course of that multiple times, becomes very frustrating. The next thing on my the next thing on my hit list of annoyances, and it's a minor one, but it's something that has to do with me more than anything. And I'm trying to learn the language as fast as I can. And I'm learning it a lot through conversation and really listening to people. I'm from Southern California, lived in the US, and spoke English most of my whole life. And with speaking any language, right, 80% of any language is tonality and body language. And I have a real tough time reading the body language and, more importantly, the tonality of French. I stupidly assume, or I default to this way of thinking that everybody's fighting with one another. And I have to be constantly corrected, and I'll find myself getting stressed out or anxious or and wondering, is everybody okay? Is everybody stressed out? What's going on? And it's like, no, we're just trying to make plans for dinner tonight. And I'm like, oh, okay. I just have to remember that everybody's being super expressive with one another. It's like the conclusion, right? I've been ranting and raving, and this has been nice because I felt like I had to get a lot of this stuff off my chest. It's like, all right, then why move here? And it's because of the things they do well. They do it so goddamn well. And luckily, the things that the French do well just so happen to align with my values perfectly. First thing, the food. The food here is immaculate. That is a stereotype and a reputation that is true. The ingredients, you go into any store here, any grocery, the ingredients are phenomenal. So you've got these amazing ingredients, and it's hard to mess it up when you're working with phenomenal vegetables and meat. And the ritual of dining out here is a cornerstone of the culture. As much as I was annoyed about it earlier in this video, people will spend 2 to 3 hours every single day at a restaurant having a wine, 3-course meal with the cheese and the dessert 3 or 4 times a week. There's this rhythm, there's this cycle of the city. No American city in its right mind would take 2 hours for lunch every single day. It's too capitalistic. Like, that does not improve the bottom line. And I kind of like that here. It's like, not everything is about the profit, but for all of its, things that annoy me, the things that they do right here is absolutely phenomenal, and it outweighs any sort of possible grievance I could ever have about this place. I'm getting back into photography and videography, which is one of my favorite hobbies. And the light here, la lumière, like the ambiance, the atmosphere in Paris and in France overall is like nowhere else I've ever seen. I walk out of my flat and I am slapped in the face with cinematography and the most gorgeous streets that look like movie sets everywhere I go. I mean, it's one of the most beautiful cities I've ever lived in my life. The architecture is absolutely incredible here. And again, that aligns with one of my core values. I'll be honest, like growing up in Southern California, I was so annoyed because Southern California is not exactly known for its architecture. I'd go visit London or New York and I'd just be in awe over this gorgeous skyscrapers and the detail that you find in the buildings here. And then you couple that with the history of these buildings, You walk around here and buildings are from the 15th, 16th century. I love that. And then along with the architecture and the old buildings and the history and just that richness that surrounds you at all times, you've got the museums, you've got the Louvre, you've got the countless places of culture that you can go to in this town. For all my grievances, for all the things that I wanted to get off my chest, I love this town. I love this place. I cannot wait to live here, hopefully for the rest of my life. But I'm gonna operate under the assumption that I'm gonna be here for a short while, so I'm gonna squeeze as much as I can out of this town and make every day count, because I realize how special of a place this is. And I wanna document, film, take photos, so that I remember my time here in Paris when I'm a very old man. Thanks for watching. Chat to you soon.